Hello and welcome to our webinar on digital marketing predictions based on trends. In this hour, we're going to be helping you kick off your 2019 marketing success with an expert's look back at what worked and what didn't in 2018. I'm Dan Bevener. I'm Simplilearn's Director of Training Research and your moderator today. And it is my pleasure to introduce you to our esteemed guest, Matt Bailey. Matt Bailey is the best-selling author, marketing expert, corporate trainer, and professional speaker. He's the founder and president of SiteLogic Marketing. Matt is the digital marketing instructor for the Direct Marketing Association in New York City. He's a member of the digital marketing faculty for Simplilearn, and he's an instructor for the OMCP. That's the Online Marketing Certified Professional Program. He's the author of Internet Marketing, an Hour a Day from 2011, Wired to be Wowed, and most recently, Teach New Dogs Old Tricks. Now, Matt excels in combining his marketing background with programming know-how, so he's going to be sharing a lot of that information with us today. So I just want to say Happy New Year, Matt, and welcome.
Hey, thanks, Dan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's good to have you. Matt and I are going to be having a kind of a candid conversation about the key lessons learned over the past year and looking ahead. And I just want to say that you're all invited to join in with your own questions and observations through a Q&A. To get this conversation started, here's a preview of some of what Matt and I will be talking about today. First of all, is going to be influencer marketing, then social media, and what's new on the horizon for that, paid search, customer experience, and finally personalization, how that brings it in. And then some other topics that may have come up during the midst of this webinar, and of course looking forward to your feedback as well. So with that, I'd like to hand the mic over to Matt and get us started with influencer marketing. How are you doing, Matt?
I'm doing well, and yeah, I've been looking forward to this for a while. There's just been a load of information over the past few months, just analyzing some of the trends, what's working, what's not working. So this is, I've been looking forward to this and kind of sharing some of the data. As you've got here, the influencer marketing, I think, has been a very interesting thing to watch over the past few years. It's very interesting because this was like the big shiny object last year. It only became shinier as the year went on. But then some little, chinks in the armor here and there. Things started to kind of fall apart. Main reason is you could divide influencers into three different areas. There are the macro influencers, which reach, like 5 to 10 million people, subscribers or followers or more. Those are typically your celebrities, actors, singers, athletes, other type of personalities. But then you have your micro-influencers. Micro-influencers are about 100,000 to 1 million followers or subscribers. And that's kind of your mid-range there. You've got a lot of bloggers, you have a lot of Twitch streamers, Instagrammers, a lot of the industries are in gaming and fashion and food. And after that are what now is being called nano-influencers. And this is becoming the shiny object within the shiny object. Nano-influencers are less than 10,000. However, due to the nature of what they do, typically you'll see nano-influencers in photography, fashion, home decor, DIY, programming, reviews, tech, marketing, design. They tend to be very niche-focused publishers of content, and it can be through blogs, vlogging, Instagramming. There's all kinds of different ways that people are influencing. And so really it just kind of comes down to the thing that almost anybody is an influencer by definition, because it's just a matter of who you influence. And then that gets back to what became one of the larger problems with influencer marketing is how influential is the influencer? What do they really move when it comes to affecting people? And so while your macro influencers are reaching millions of people with a video or with their posts, was it really moving the dial on sales or in getting new subscribers? And when you start to look at the numbers as far as what was generated and your cost per sale or your cost per acquisition, and you compared that to other channels, such as paid search, such as organic search, or some of your other more established programs, the influencer marketing was way out of reach when you did a per sale or per acquisition look, especially on that macro level, because the cost was, upwards of around $10,000 US for creating a video to be published on YouTube for a brand. And so that became a big issue as far as the escalating rates that your macro influencers were charging. Also, which became a problem as well, is that 90% of macro influencers that are celebrities in any way, singers, actors, athletes, 90% of them are not marking their paid marketing as an ad. It means that if they're receiving any money, if they're receiving any consideration or product, they need to disclose that in their posts or in their videos or in their posts. If they don't disclose that, that is a problem with the FTC and with most governments around the world, because it is a matter of consumer protection. So about 90% of your macro influencers are not marking paid ads as ads. They're not disclosing the relationship. Probably one of the biggest things that happened in the past year is that Unilever announced that it will no longer utilize influencers that purchase followers. And it's been estimated that nearly half of influencers are buying followers. It's not hard to go online and find services where you can buy followers and you can buy likes. You can buy Instagram likes, you can buy YouTube likes, you can buy YouTube followers and likes. If there's a social media, you can buy followers and likes. And honestly, the price is not that bad. I think one of the prices I saw that if you want 5,000 followers, it'll only cost you $40. Now, it's amazing how many people are doing this, because if you have more followers, then you can demand more money from influencer marketing. So you can buy these. And honestly, the other side of this industry is that it creates literal digital sweatshops, where click farms are right now in third world countries becoming sweatshops where people sit around and click and follow on thousands of phones in a warehouse. And they're only being paid pennies to do this. And so there is a kind of a seamy underbelly going on here. Now, because of that,
Yeah, are there any tools? I don't know if you're going to get to this, but someone's asking if there are any tools people can use to determine whether or not the follower account of a particular social media influencer is necessarily bona fide. Like, are there tools out there that you can choose to see that, oh, well, this might be just a bunch of bots?
Yeah, there are tools. There are some auditing tools that are out there. And also, the social media themselves are trying to purge these accounts when they find them. The main issue is it's very similar to ad fraud and just about any other industry. The better the tools get to detect the fake accounts, the better the fake accounts get. And so it's kind of an arms race as to, if there's a demand, someone's going to supply that demand, and they're going to develop the technology to look like legitimate followers or users when they're not, because the demand is there. So yeah, there is technology to do it. It's not perfect at this point. So yeah, what Unilever did is they announced they're not going to utilize any influencers that if it's proven or shown that they are purchasing followers, and essentially they'd get blacklisted. At the same time, after spending tens of millions of dollars on influencer marketing, they really pulled back, and they are reevaluating all of their influencer initiatives. They're also auditing their agency relationships, they're now down to a third of the agencies that they used last year. They're bringing a lot more things in-house, a lot more expertise in-house, but ultimately they're auditing their ad spend and how it will be used. It's real interesting. Avinash Kaushik over at Google Analytics, he calls influencer marketing a faith-based marketing. It's an incredibly non-accountable way of marketing. He has some pretty strong opinions about that, and I agree with much of them. I think what you will see is influencer marketing moving into something that's much more tangible, much more focused. Because what's happening here is the larger the influencer you work with, the less brand control you have. And then how do you distinguish what you are asking people to do for your brand from, one of the biggest terms to come up in the past few years is fake news. And sometimes we are seeing fake news equated with non-disclosed ads from influencers. And so your brand has to draw a line there. And then what happens if the brand or the influencer you're working with does something wrong? There are numerous examples of influencers who have just gone off the tracks, and the brand then has had to scramble and respond to that. So what do you do in response to that? The best influencer campaigns that I have seen run is where the brand finds an influencer who's already a fan of the product or of that company. And that influencer already has a platform, and that platform is related to that product or that industry. And typically they would be then defined as your nano influencer, somewhere between 10,000 or less than 100,000 followers. But finding those influencers that they like your product already, and they'd be more than happy to pitch for it. And if they get compensation for it in some way, or shape, or form, they'll be even more happy. So finding that right cohesion there, and then also their followers have to be willing to listen when this influencer says they're being paid to present this content as an ad. Too many times, influencers will put it out there, and then later their followers find out that it was an ad or they were paid to do that. Doesn't go over too well. So it's finding the right influencer who knows your brand, I believe it, and they're already a fan of it. And that way, when they do talk about it, it's going to be genuine. And chances are they've already talked about the brand when they weren't getting consideration for it. So then as they move on, and maybe they are getting consideration, then their followers will be probably more open, especially if it is shown and they're being upfront that they're receiving compensation for it. So that's really where I think influencer, if it's going to survive, that's how it's going to happen, is, we're always going to have the big companies with deep pockets spending money with the macro influencers, the big names with millions of followers. That's going to happen because they've got the money to do it. But small businesses, medium-sized businesses, other companies, what I see is they're trying to avoid the large-scale influencers, and instead they're focusing on smaller ones that they can work more with and control the brand message even more.
Right, and of course be very careful with the future of that too, because I know there have been some cases where influencers have, for example, in the e-cigarette side, have been really proponents of the product, and then later on change their mind about it, and so sometimes it can go sideways on you.
Yeah, and that's the thing. They may take the job for the money, but then after some pressure, they may give in and stop. So again, it comes down to I look at, were they a fan of this to start? Or am I paying them to say something nice? Especially when, 2-3 years ago, the buzzword was authenticity. I haven't heard that as much recently. And I think it has something to do with influencer marketing.
Of course, maintain your personal relationships well with them as well, so that you don't give them any and pay them when you say you're going to. So I'm sure anything that you can keep
Absolutely.
that relationship intact, the better. So
Hmm.
super important.
Absolutely.
Cool. What's going on
But
in the world of social media now?
social media, yeah, I hesitate to use this word. Social media, was the disruptive influence in traditional media, and now I think social media is going to go through disruption in itself. Uh, it's interesting the studies that are coming out, especially among Gen Z and younger users. There is a large percentage of them who don't want anything to do with social media, and it's so interesting because these generations have grown up as digital natives. They've seen their parents, they've seen siblings on social media, and when you read some of the quotes about what they say about it, and they seem to go around with, "I don't want to play the game. I don't want the pressure. I don't want to have to maintain." There's a real, almost kind of a rebellion going on about that among the younger users. Um, Now, also, currently in social media, Radium One is a social media listening program company. They're estimating right now that over 80% of sharing takes place on what they call dark social. Now, dark social, it may sound sinister. It just means like SMS or private chats. Uh, what it means is that users are not comfortable anymore uh, putting their opinions out in public. Instead, they're using SMS in group chats or in individual chats, or they are moving to more anonymous platforms such as Reddit or discussion forums where they don't have to publish their real name. And so I think a lot of this also has to do with, there is a waning trust in platforms, specifically Twitter and Facebook. Facebook's inability to control fake news, but also the overstepping of privacy in so many areas. It's really kind of created this interesting position now where people will either use Facebook and Twitter, very limited, uh, but we see more of this migration to more anonymous or offline or dark uh, channels to share information. Um, it's interesting because the average time for a user on Facebook plateaued years ago. Facebook cannot get the average time per user per day to grow, and they haven't been able to do it for years. The stories, which works great on Instagram, doesn't work well on Facebook. They have to rely on the feed, which is where ads and fake news thrive, and that reduces trust. So again, I think this is probably the third or fourth time I've talked about trust, and I think that is part of the reason we're going to see a lot of disruption, especially in the big players, Facebook, Twitter. We're not seeing it so much in YouTube now, although they do have some cross currents kind of coming in with digital rights and copyrights and things like that. A lot of your producers of content on YouTube are really feeling some pressure there. So that's part of, I think, part of the, as one user said, I'm exhausted from social media. And more, I think I've seen and also talked to people online who have decided just to, what they say, commit social media suicide and move more towards anonymous platforms.
Well, I've noticed statistics about it as well, just because as a marketer, always having to keep track of what the biggest thing is. And I'm really surprised, particularly worldwide, that it seemed like the last time I checked, the number one platform for social was WhatsApp.
Yeah.
And and just like you're saying, more the SMS type focus. And I think, just like you're saying, trust has really eroded in terms of Facebook, especially. I've been even hearing the term the MySpaceification of Facebook, where it's almost like it used to be a great platform, and now it's sort of been taken over by commercial interests. And so,
Yeah.
People keep forgetting the fact that if it's free, you're the product.
Well, it's interesting because I have my own research department here. I have 3 teenage girls, and so that gives me an insight, a very unique insight into social media. And I'll tell you what they and their friends are doing. Um, right now, the oldest one has an Instagram account, but it's private and it's only for friends. And then she has started one for work and for kind of her own little business that she's starting. The rest of them are all about SMS, direct messaging, and I'll tell you that the 2 platforms that they spend the most amount of time on are YouTube and Pinterest, and that blows my mind because Pinterest is almost their go-to place for just about anything. It's almost they're going to Pinterest more than they're going to Google a lot of times in order to find recipes, pictures, information. It's really interesting to see really how they and their friends are using things that I wouldn't, when it comes to looking up a recipe, I would go to a search engine and they go to Pinterest.
Right. Well, how is this affecting? That's great for business to consumer and for people communicating with each other. But what's the best? What are the best approaches that businesses can find, particularly when they're going in the B2B aspect in terms of social?
Find where people are talking. Forums. I am amazed how much forums have been neglected in digital marketing because every year or two we have a new shiny object and everyone follows over it. But I'm amazed at how the lasting power of discussion forums. There are even still some email lists, discussion lists that are out there. But the thing is find where people are talking about these things. Where are they sharing information, and how is that happening? And you'll find, some B2B, they really have some strong presence in different areas because people will find a way to share information that they can't get from the brands and getting like real comparison data or how do I make this happen within this setup. It's really fascinating where you can get some of that. One of the things when I was at a B2B, one of the things that was invaluable is doing a user group of our customers and learning from them. Where do you get additional information? Where do you go when you've got a question? Because, we were one provider, but they had probably 50 or 60 providers for the entire workflow. So, interviewing them about how they get information, then that can point you in the right direction to find some of those online resources that they use.
Yeah, well, someone is asking specifically about Snapchat and where that's playing into the social media sphere for 2019.
I think Snapchat is kind of that. They play second to Instagram. I've not seen strong engagement or strong numbers come out of it, especially considering why and how it was started and the purpose. I think a lot of those that know the story of Snapchat really have an aversion to using it. And I think also, I think it's kind of up and down, but I really don't see them unless they kind of remake themselves. I don't see them really pulling ahead of Instagram or some of the other social media.
Right. Now, someone else is asking, does the waning of social media include B2B via LinkedIn? I'm like, how is LinkedIn playing in all of this?
LinkedIn, I'm blown away by LinkedIn, especially some of the things that they've done over the past few years. The acquisition of lynda.com and now the LinkedIn Learning edition, it's becoming really your professional face online. I think that is going to continue to grow stronger because from a B2B standpoint, there's nothing like it that enables those connections and enables you to reach people. Now, the one thing that will get LinkedIn is, I've also seen an increase in the amount of people that want to connect with you and automatically make it a sales channel or get a sales pitch, that's going to turn people off. Um, getting 10 sales pitches a day through LinkedIn is not anyone's idea of fun. And so LinkedIn is going to have to somehow keep that under control because, a social platform does have to have that element of curiosity, of fun. And if I've got to deal with sales pitches all day, I'm not going to be as integrated in it. But LinkedIn, I don't see any signs at this point of going backwards. In fact, they're going exactly the opposite. They are growing and growing worldwide.
Right.
It's really cool to see.
Yeah, I guess probably someone's offering that. Probably the best thing they need to work on next year is they have a lot of work to do on their paid platform for like Campaign Manager, but one thing at a time.
Well, and that's what's interesting. And so doing campaigns on LinkedIn, the results, you will pay more and get less results on LinkedIn. The main reason is, especially from B2B, everyone's seen it before. They know it's an ad. They know they're being sold to. And so you'll get good visibility, you'll get good impressions, you might even get some clicks, but the conversions from LinkedIn are very, very low. And it mainly because who you're targeting, everybody else is targeting. And they've seen it. And so to work on LinkedIn takes a real dedicated effort, and you just can't do the typical campaign and let it run. There's got to be ongoing follow-up, retargeting, redeploying. It takes an effort because you're talking to people. They get, like I said, they're getting 10 sales pitches a day from LinkedIn. Yeah. So you've got to distinguish yourself.
Yeah. Well, with that brief touch on Campaign Manager, is this a good time to move on to paid search?
Absolutely. Right. Absolutely. It's similar to what I just said on LinkedIn, is just right now going out and buying keywords and putting an ad up, developing a landing page. That's great, but that's only about 20% of what your total campaign needs to cover. If that's all you're doing, you may get some business, you may have a profitable campaign, but anymore, if you are going to develop a paid search campaign, you need to look at what is the customer journey. What are people looking for and when? Am I getting them early in the buying cycle? And if so, if they come to my landing page and probably not convert, am I retargeting to take advantage of that? And am I retargeting with the right message to move them to the next stage of research? If I know people are researching and they come to my landing page, what can I offer them that helps them research and doesn't oversell? How do I move them to that next stage, give them the information they need? So it's really breaking down these stages, but then also post-purchase. What are people going to be searching for post-purchase that I can reach them and maybe upsell or cross-sell or enable them or educate them about how they can get more out of their campaigns? It's really, paid search and social are all now, it's going to become a matter not so much of I've got a big idea and I'm going to go to a campaign. It's what's your big plan? Not your big idea, but what's your big plan? And then it's going to come down to how well do you execute that plan? And then how well are you following through executing that plan? Are you doing all the details that were in that plan? The problem is when you just approach social or paid search and you do the basic campaign, that stuff's not going to work moving forward. It's going to take a serious commitment to understanding the customer, what they need, when they need it, and answering those questions as they go through it and measuring every step of the way. So that's really, where paid search is going to require more commitment from advertisers. But here's the payoff. People rely on search now more than ever. Monthly active users, the number of searches are increasing dramatically around the world. Google came out with a number late last year that 84% of Americans are shopping for something all the time, and in up to 6 different product categories. I mean, that is astounding. That most Americans are shopping for 6 things at any given moment in time. Uh, I would challenge you, go look at if you're on Google, if you have a Google account, go to your account, look at your history, and look at the past things that you have searched for just in the past 2 days. I guarantee you there is a lot of information in there, product information. What are you looking for? What are you shopping for? But also, people are integrating themselves on a more personal level with search. So, we talked a little bit about voice assistants and voice search. The amount of searches that are becoming more personal, and by that I mean they're using the words near me. The phrase near me has increased 200% for the past 2 years. Year over year, people searching for something near me. The word I is being used more often. I think it's up 65% this year over last year, which even that was about 50%. Near me, and we're seeing people searching for more personal things using personal words, such as, what shampoo is best for me? What dog food is best for me? It's interesting how people are integrating themselves into the search and looking, relying on search to provide very personalized recommendations.
Yeah, I was seeing how conversational search queries and the whole popularity of the assistants like Google and Siri and Alexa are really changing SEO like that compared to the days when people just typed in queries, so people just talking to their phones. And we'll probably get into that a little bit later, but how is that really affecting?
Well, and it's really, the funny thing is when people type in near me, and especially when they're on their phones, they don't need to do that. I don't know how, because Google takes care of that anyway. If they know where you are, you're going to get results based on that. So it's interesting to see where people are using that so much. But it's important from a local business standpoint, is understanding what are people searching for around you, and how do you then position yourself to get that visibility when people are searching for your business, when they're searching for things to do, places to eat, things to visit, understanding those words that people are using them and how they're using them. But then also what we're seeing in search is people are searching for advice. So like the 10 best, or the best products for this, or the best brands for this. So people want more research and comparison information, and that's how they're searching in order to make their decision, and also how to prepare themselves in order to make the best decision.
Yeah, that's a great point, especially since too. I think the review aspect is having a big pull into it too, because people are really spending a lot more effort in looking at reviews rather than necessarily a lot of search ads and other types of organic and other organic type search results.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a big part of it. And, well, I know myself, I do a lot of travel, and my travel Yelp is my, that's my guidebook. So, I followed that pretty closely.
Mm-hmm. Now, before we move on, excuse me. Before we move on to the next section, I have one question that looks pretty interesting here about how do you, with all these changes coming up, what's a good suggestion as to how you can staff and resource to execute these more complex plans, particularly on the paid search side? Now, I see a lot of changes in how more traditional marketing teams, how do they structure and hire in order to adapt to the digital transformation requirements, particularly in business to business?
In business to business, well, and I've seen this take place now in some larger enterprise companies where they're creating smaller teams to handle specific channels or specific campaigns. For example, a paid search campaign now, I need someone who can handle the creative. I need someone who can make the buy. I need someone who can analyze the numbers, but I also need someone who can create specific plans or scenarios of here's how we're going to reach this, and here's how we're going to reach this person, and here's how we're going to reach these keywords and these ideas. And they plan them out, and then you have your content person. They're creating the ads. They're creating the landing pages. And then you're working with your ad buyer. You're working with a small team to make that happen. But then that team is also day to day watching the campaign, watching it unfold, and saying, what can we improve? How do we do this? And so the companies that I have seen really excel at this, it's less management and more teamwork from the different discipline areas that are able to execute, make decisions, change, try, fail, move. And it becomes a much more dynamic process because we're focused on this and we're going to make this happen. And we've got all the pieces that we need, all the players that we need in order to get this campaign up and running quickly, but also adjust quickly. That's what I've seen as really kind of the future of working in these different channels.
Right. Well, great advice. I just have one more question on the paid side, and that is, do you see Google moving into the ABM space within ads?
I'm sorry, Dan, what was that?
Account-based marketing.
Oh, okay. Ooh, wow. That's interesting. I know a lot of time. Well, anytime you set up an ad within Google, they want to get their team involved, and especially the more money you spend, the more pressure you're going to get from Google to help manage your campaign. I have some issues with that. I don't always think that the people you talk to have the most experience in it. So obviously they want you to spend, but more and more, I have seen more enterprise level companies as well as SMBs realize that rather than just have the agency do everything and cut a check every month, they need to have in-house expertise in paid search that understand what's going on, what makes it happen, and how to evaluate a campaign so that they can get the most out of their search. That goes back to what Unilever is doing in bringing more expertise in-house rather than relying on the agency to do it all, so that you've got people who can ask the right questions in-house and make that evaluation and make that determination what needs to happen. So I hope I answered the question correctly, with the account management. But from high level to mid level, what I'm seeing is people are relying on training their own people or bringing in expertise so that decisions are made with the interest of the company, with more expertise and understanding of how to get the most out of these accounts.
Right. Well, I know one way to get the most of it out of accounts, as a segue here, is to improve the customer experience overall. So let's lead us into that and what we can look forward to in 2019.
All right. I am so excited about customer experience. I love doing life cycle or customer lifetime analysis or customer journey. I love doing that stuff because I tell you what, every time I worked with a company on their customer journey, there has been thousands of dollars discovered. It's just thousands of dollars on the table that because everyone is doing their job but not looking at the big picture, something's always left behind. And so when you get a group of people into the room and you look at that entire customer journey, you see some of the holes. And those holes are sometimes where we're dropping the ball with customers, where we're not making a connection with them, we're not communicating well. And so the experience, people used to say, SEO is king or content is king. I'm going to go with experience is king. If there's one thing that will transcend any type of marketing, it's experience. Because if you work with a company and they do what they say they'll do and their product does what they say it'll do, but then they go the extra mile to make sure that you're happy, to make sure that you're getting the most out of it, and assisting you and providing additional education, you know what, you're going to go out of your way to go back to them the next time. Or if, there's a subscription, you're going to be more than happy to say, yes, I'm going to resubscribe because I can't live without it. The entire customer experience right now can be measured, modeled, and you can magnify each individual piece to find out what's happening, where are we failing, where can we improve, and what will be the measured response if we improve. And so engaging in that will enable you to retain existing customers at a higher rate, and also onboard new customers and engage them right away. Because right now, customers cite experience as the biggest factor for brand loyalty. So, and that experience, that starts with search. It starts with when people have a problem, and how do you give them that information? It extends into social, how you engaging, educating, how you developing your customers, and how are you communicating with them over the long term, not just to get them as a customer. I think I saw a study somewhere that like 70% of brand communications are all in pre-sales, that only 30% or less of brand communications are from a post-sale perspective. And that is what will kill the customer experience.
Part of that aspect of creating a good customer experience also includes personalization.
Absolutely.
Moving forward with that?
Personalization, it's as simple, honestly, as putting someone's name in a subject line or, in a document. But personalization is not just about putting my name in something. It's a little bit more than that. Personalization is about, is this message relevant to me right now? That's what personalization is all about. So, we can get into, AI, chatbots, personas, demographics, but really what it comes down to is, how are you personalizing things right now? In this slide here, how do you make that customer feel special? What are you doing right now? Because if you're relying on AI or automation, if you're relying on those things to create personalization and you're not doing it now as a regular business practice, it won't happen.
I was just going to say, with the rise of AI and all the helpful things that machine learning can do in terms of monitoring your social media and paying attention to you, do you think people will start to get suspicious of that when it becomes obvious that the personalization is machine generated? How are people going to manage that? I mean, at what point does it stop being personalization and just seem automated?
Yeah. Now, this is a different form of personalization, and I'm glad you brought it up. I saw a T-Mobile ad the other day, and in this ad, they made a promise that when you call customer support, you're going to talk to a human and not a chatbot. Now, I thought that was amazing that, when the buzzwords for the next year and people were excited about AI, chatbots, and machine learning, here's T-Mobile saying, you know what, you're going to get a person. And they're saying, you're going to get a person because we respect you. And, when it comes to tech problems, they're one of the most stressful things that people have to go through. And you have every right to talk to a person and not a machine. I thought that was bold, and I think that is in response to what people think about chatbots and AI. One of the biggest issues that I have seen as far as resistance to that is empathy. Chatbots have no empathy when you have a problem.
Yeah, I guess it'll just be a couple more years before they work out the Turing test for empathy on that. But pretty soon people are going to see through it anyway.
Yeah, and there's a place and a time for the chatbots. It's when you try to push them into what are high stress situations or high emotion situations that the frustration will grow quickly, and people hang up or just stop. So for ordering pizza, I have no problem with a chatbot because chances are they're going to get my order correct. So for small things where there are clear instructions or a clear menu of options, chatbots are great. But when it comes to customer support, when there's problems, yeah, that's when the empathy kicks in.
Yeah. And what's your recommendation for doing this at scale then?
Um, Boy, that's good. That again, that comes back to what are you doing right now? Before the technology comes, what is your business doing right now? Because human traits are empathy, emotion, creativity, and it's very difficult, if not impossible, to automate that. So if you have plans and you have procedures in place to deal with this personalization, to deal with customer care, then that will make it easier when the technology comes in and then starts to scale. See, the issue, and I say this many times, especially when it comes to CRMs and things like that, uh, I'm overwhelmed by the amount of people that will make a decision to buy a CRM, but then when it comes time to implement the CRM, are shocked when they have to then develop 300 emails for different scenarios because they were under the impression that, well, marketing automation, that means the computer does it. I don't. So it's impossible to automate what you don't do already.
Right.
That's really the bottom line.
That's a great point. Let's move onto content here. A couple of people have asked questions about content specifically. The H-Hub is pioneering a new system of decentralized content creation with their community-driven content engine replacing influencer marketing in the process. So I know that kind of goes back to influencer stuff, but it's all about content. What are your thoughts about that?
One word, quality. Produce less content, but produce better content. That would be my main direction. I've worked with a couple of enterprise brands over the past few years, and they have discovered this as well, that developing a lot of content doesn't work. Producing less content, but produced better and higher quality it works. And so, content that doesn't educate, inform, or entertain is worthless.
So you're saying even tons of little articles are not as important as just having the right size articles that are meaningful and relevant, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. A short written content piece of maybe 100 words with a graphic may be all I need for that particular purpose. Right. On the other side, I was on a website the other day and I subscribed to it, and I can't remember what it was. The article was a 4,000-word article, but they had interactive content within the article that was so engaging. It was incredible. And so, I read the entire article. I engaged with these little interactive, and it was all based on live data. And I could adjust these live data points and see things. And again, it was quality. It was the presentation. It was so high quality. And so, the problem so much isn't so much users' attention is that, well, no one's going to give attention to your white paper that's basically an ad. Yeah. That's what it comes down to.
What's the purpose? Do you see a future for long white papers and big content like that, even on the B2B side?
I do.
And especially, how's that going to affect SEO?
Good, solid research will always be in demand because it's information. It's good content. It's learning about things that affect my industry. The thing is, you're going to have to get better at presenting it. So whether it's not so much a PDF, but maybe it's a online with interactive charts or data based on incoming data streams from different sources. It's really the quality of content and how you present it. It just being lazy about content is not going to work. And I don't think it matters anything about the number of words. If you put quality stuff out there that people need, that they use to make decisions with, that they, it will help them do better in their job. That's what people want.
It's a good gauge for all content and everything. And now let's move on to email marketing, because we have a lot of people asking about that. So what worked? What are the big changes? And what do you see for the future?
I'll tell you what, from all the analytics that I've been looking at from multiple companies, from enterprise to SMB to lone wolf operations, email is growing as an effective channel. It is powerful. I think a lot of this is CRM and automation coming into it, and the companies that are planning that, again, they're planning that customer journey, they're planning communications, they're creating trigger-based emails. So again, the relevance factor is high. That if I get a triggered email, it's because of something I just did, something I just looked at, or an event that just happened that I'm familiar with. And so the email that I receive is highly relevant. So email marketing, the influence of that, very high, and I don't see it lowering. It's the influence is great, and when you look at the return from email, it's fantastic. It's one of the channels that I'm just excited about. Now, I think someone had a question about subject lines and open.
Whether are there any particular metrics as far as what's working in terms of subject line length? They were asking. I know that's a tough thing, because the answer is often it depends on the audience, and if the subject line if every word in your subject line is relevant, then it doesn't matter how many words it is. But I've looked at benchmarks of the last year. I don't want to take steam from you. You're the expert here, but I've seen so many different stories on it that it's hard to give one definitive answer. But what have you seen? And also specifically, people are asking about emojis, whether that's still a thing.
Yeah. Okay. Here's what I love about subject lines. Like you, Dan, I've seen research into length of the subject line, personalization, what else? Emojis being used, time of day of week, all these things. None of them really show quantifiable differences among themselves. The primary factor is personal relevance. And let me define that. Personal relevance is, if I get your email right now, how interesting or relevant is it to me right now? That's the key. It may be relevant to me later on in the day. It may be relevant to me next week. But when I see that email in my inbox, that's the determining factor. How interesting or relevant is the content to me right now? That is the biggest determining factor to open and click rates. And that's why your highest open and click rates are triggered marketing, triggered emails, because they're based on what I just did, what I just saw, what I just looked at. That's why, and it's a high relevance. So those have the highest open and click rates.
Yeah, I'm starting to see a theme here: relevance in your content, relevance in your paid stuff, relevance in your
relevance and quality, man. Relevance and quality.
Yeah, we talked a bit about the voice-enabled search, so I'm going to skip through that because we're running out of time here and want to make sure we get to everything. But what do you have anything to say about marketing automation and what's in store for that, particularly with you mentioned some of these email products, and now if you don't have a good system for being personal and relevant to your customers, marketing automation is going to be harder to deploy.
Yeah, honestly, it's a good question. For marketing automation, I alluded to this earlier. I'd simply like to see the companies that have Marketo and HubSpot actually use them to their fullest capabilities before chasing something new. I just talked to a business the other day that has a marketing automation platform. They were frustrated with it, and they asked me to get on the call with their marketing platform and them, and the ultimate result was, well, it wasn't completely installed. It's running on like a 45% capacity, and the client had not finished the work they needed to fully implement it. Again, it came back to I bought it, it should work. What more do I have to do? Uh, so many companies have invested in these systems, but they have yet to use them to their capacity. Again, you can't automate what you don't have. And so that would be my wish for the future of automation platforms, is that companies would actually do the work to use them to their fullest capability. After that, everything gets easier.
Yeah.
So
and that brings that kind of circles back to someone's previous question about what type of people can you hire for this. And it seems like if you've got marketing automation, you really need to bring in a marketing automation expert, and that's probably true for any.
Yeah, marketing automation expert, content people, but also I would call them content visionaries. Mm-hmm. Content visionaries of what do people need right now, and what, coming up with scenarios. What about customers in this demographic or in this firmographic who are doing this? What message can we give them? So it's that content visionary, being able to come up with how do we engage people at different points through their journey, and what do we want them to do, and how do we measure that? So it's people who can ask those questions, who can develop those plans. They are going to be the ones that are going to be the most valuable moving forward.
Right. Well, cool. It looks like we only have time for another couple of questions here. One person chimed in just asking specifically about whether Gmail's tabbed interface is still a major issue in email marketing for 2019. Is that going to impede stuff getting into the inbox?
Oh yeah, Google's not going to make anything easy. You still need to ask people to to trust it or to put it into their primary email tab. Those are some of the things you can do. But yeah, we can see when we look at email deliverability, Google is one of the lower email platforms when it comes to deliverability, and that tabbed interface is still, one of the primary things that I believe causes that.
Going back to paid search, is there anything that people can do to fight ad fraud, like click flooding and click injection and the SDK spoofing? Because this advertiser is like tens of billions in 2018.
Yeah.
What's going to happen?
It's ad fraud is taking place at a global level. It's at the level of organized crime. The technology that they're using, what they're doing is just phenomenal. I'll tell you what, from an SMB perspective, there's absolutely nothing you can do. Look at your reports, educate yourself. It's the enterprise level where you're going to see more of it. However, it's hard to spot because, programmatic buying, it works and it delivers. And so it's harder to find the fraud within that. And that's the thing. It's not so much the marketers that have the ability to fight this. It's the platforms. It's the Googles, the Facebooks. What responsibility do they bear for people using their platforms to make, to perform this fraud? There's not a lot the average marketer can do. Unfortunately, when it comes to that.
Yeah, and as the artificial intelligence and machine learning products that come up to fight fraud, then it's that arms race that goes back and forth.
Yeah, they're using AI to create it too. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Great. I think that's all the time we have today for all these questions. I want to say thank you to everyone. There were so many great questions, and especially I want to thank you, Matt, because and invite people to reach out to you at Matt Bailey Says. Thanks again to Matt for joining us, and remember to visit simplylearn.com/digital marketing for info on how to learn more best practices. Tweet us at simplylearn.
Well, thank you, Dan. Appreciate it.
And my pleasure, and a very prosperous new year for all of us.